Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted Podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and I want to start this podcast off like I always do by thanking my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, talent, and resources to be able to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out to tune in to this podcast. Your support means the absolute world to me. Well, the Denver Broncos went 5-11 in 2017, and with their 2018 schedule, I believe the Broncos can be playoff bound. Yes, I know that sounds crazy, and I'll go game by game and tell you why I believe the Orange and Blue Wrecking Crew can be a playoff squad in 2018. Also, there's 2 games on the Broncos' schedule that I can easily see being flexed into Sunday Night Football on NBC. One of which will have some of you thinking I have lost my doggone mind. It's straight Broncos talk today on episode 12 of the Undrafted Podcast. Let's get it! The Denver Broncos only have 3 primetime games this year in 2018. This is a stark contrast to the 5 or 6 nationally televised primetime games that they've received in years past. Now, of course, when Peyton Manning was in Denver, the Broncos stayed in the national spotlight. But, having a Hall of Famer at the quarterback position just tends to do that to you. The Broncos will work the day shift plenty of times in 2018. Some games could be flexed to NBC's Sunday Night Football, and I see 2 games on the Broncos' schedule that have that potential, and I guarantee you one of them won't make sense on the surface, but just stick with me. We'll get to that later. Now, for me personally, one thing that I look forward to anytime the schedule comes out, well, really anytime during the offseason, is finding out which uniforms the Broncos will wear as the course of the season goes on. Because I'm just going to tell you, the Denver Broncos have the best uniforms in the National Football League. And that is a 100% biased opinion, because you can't tell me that orange jersey, there's no other team that really wears orange like the Broncos wear orange. The Chicago Bears, they have an orange alternate jersey, but to me it doesn't really look all that good. And, of course, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who have orange sprinkled throughout their jersey. The Browns, they have a version of the orange jersey, but nobody does orange like the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are the only team in the NFL who has orange as their primary, as one of their primary uniform colors. The Broncos orange jersey with those white pants and that blue Broncos helmet with the horse head on the side. And then you have a lot of players who wear the orange and blue Nike cleats or Under Armour cleats, whoever they're sponsored with. You put that combination together, and you cannot tell me the Denver Broncos don't have the best uniform in the National Football League. Now, of course, that's my 100% biased opinion. Generally, the Broncos break out the blue alternate jerseys a few times out of the year. The blue jerseys, of course, used to be the Broncos' home jerseys before they made the switch back to orange prior to the 2012 season. The blue alternates are cool. They have 2 versions of the blue alternate jerseys. They've got the blue jerseys with the white pants, of course, and then they've got the all-blue uniform selection. The all blues are clean. It's the blue jersey with the blue pants with the orange stripe going down the side. It's clean. It's clean as all get out. Now, the color rush, a lot of fans don't like the color rush option that NFL teams do primarily for their Thursday night football games. But me personally, I love the color rush concept because the NFL season is long. It's 256 regular season games between all 32 teams in 16 weeks of football. The NFL season is long. That's not even counting preseason. That's not counting playoffs. And, of course, the Super Bowl. So the NFL's concept of color rush is something really cool to break up the monotony that tends to be the NFL uniform. The Broncos version of the color rush uniform is lit. That all orange uniform with the old school D on the helmet is fire. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's straight up fire. And another thing that I really liked about it was the Broncos found a way. Broncos fans have been clamoring for years for a way for the Broncos to be able to find a way to incorporate the old school big D on the helmet. And due to the NFL's crazy one helmet rule that they enacted back in 2013 in response to the CTE lawsuit, the NFL has some crazy idea that making players stick to one helmet throughout the season some way, somehow makes them less likely to receive a head injury, despite the fact that there's no scientific evidence to prove that whatsoever. And you need to look no further than the NCAA, the NFL's free farm system, to see that there's no evidence behind that. College teams, well, not all of them, some college teams switch uniforms and helmets, multiple times throughout a season. And there's no evidence to prove that switching helmets either increases or decreases a player's likelihood of receiving a head injury. But that's another story for another day. So I like the fact that the Broncos found a way to incorporate fans' requests that they've been requesting for years, as well as sticking to the NFL's one helmet rule. Now, it remains to be seen what the NFL is going to do about that one helmet rule. There's talk of the NFL possibly letting up on that rule due to the fact that there's been no evidence whatsoever, medically speaking, that their one helmet rule is actually helping to reduce head injuries. So we'll see what happens there. Anyway, back to the Broncos and this 2018 schedule. The Broncos went 5-11, and as we all know, the Broncos looked bad in 2017. I love the Denver Broncos. I absolutely love the Broncos, but I'll call a spade every day of the week. 2017 was the most embarrassing season for the Broncos since 2010 when they went 4-12 and had the second pick in the following NFL draft that landed them Von Miller. Now, for Coach Vance Joseph, this is a make-it-or-break-it year. I've said that multiple times on this podcast. Vance Joseph is in a critical time in his career. He's a smart guy. He has great football philosophy, but he was out-coached many times last year. As far as him being out-coached, I can't really say if that was all on Vance Joseph. Maybe a big part of that was from him not really having any good quarterbacks to really work with. And branching off from the quarterback problem, there was also the offense that could not stay on the field, whether it was going 3 and out multiple times in a game or just turning the ball over too many times. The Broncos had 34 turnovers last season. They had 22 interceptions and 12 fumbles. You can't win in the NFL turning the ball over like that. I guess you can't really point to one big issue when it comes to Vance Joseph and his 5-11 record last year because, of course, the players still have to go out and play the game. All the coaches can do is just coach. But there were several times last year that the Broncos looked out-coached and outmatched. And I'm not saying that as a derogatory way or anything like that. I'm just saying there were several times that they looked unprepared. They looked like a team that was just uninterested. They looked like a team that had lost their way. They had lost their heart. And, it's easy to get into that rut, especially when you're losing games at basically an unprecedented pace for a lot of the guys that were on the roster. Now, I still have high hopes for Vance Joseph. I really do. I really think he's going to turn out to be a good football coach. Fans have to remember, most first-time head football coaches in the NFL don't do well their first time out with the squad. Bill Belichick was terrible in Cleveland, and look how that turned out. There's a whole list of guys who were bad either with their first squad or especially in their first year as a head coach. So there is a learning curve. It's just like when you go out and you get another job, even if it's in the same industry or another industry, if you change careers, whatever, if you go out and you get another job, you got to learn company protocol. You have to learn how your boss wants things done. You have to learn how even a shift manager or something wants things done. There's a learning curve anytime you switch jobs. Doesn't matter if it's a promotion, if it's a lateral move, it's, whatever the case is, there's always going to be a learning curve anytime you switch jobs. It's no different in the National Football League. Vance Joseph and the Broncos have a clean slate in 2018. They've got a quarterback after signing Case Keenum, and they got some new weapons to fight with on the field. With this schedule and the Broncos' free agency pickups and draft picks, I see no reason why the Denver Broncos can't go 10-6 or even 11-5. And I know that sounds crazy, but I see no reason why the Broncos can't. Okay, maybe not 10-6 or 11-5. I'll even say 9-7. There's no reason why the Broncos can't improve 4 games over what they did last season. But personally, I believe the Broncos can go either 9-7, 10-6, or 11-5. And I'll go over the games with the schedule, and I'll tell you why I believe the Broncos can do this. The Broncos have one of the easiest schedules in the National Football League in 2018, at least on paper. Of course, we know they still have to play the game. There's only 3 teams on Denver's schedule who made the playoffs last year. Not even looking at the playoffs for the Broncos at this point. Let's get to 9 or 10 wins next season, and then we'll start looking forward. Patience is key. We have to remember, Broncos fans, patience is key. This is a team that's going under a lot of changes since last year. With all that being said, I'm going to take you through game by game and tell you what I think about the Broncos' schedule. Week 1, September 9th, the season opener for the Broncos. They opened the season up against the Seahawks in Denver. I've hated the Seattle Seahawks since Super Bowl 48. I'll be straight up honest with you. I have hated that team since that game because that game hurt me, man. That game really stung my heart. But I'll be completely honest with you. As soon as I saw Manny Ramirez hike the ball over Peyton Manning's head on the very first play of the game, I remember looking at my dad and I remember saying, I think Denver just lost the game. Because that told me everything I needed to know about where the Broncos were mentally going into that game. Seattle's defense was a buzzsaw in 2013. There's no other way to put it. Much like Denver's defense was in 2015. You couldn't afford to make many mistakes against the defense like that and expect to win the game. And as far as this 12th man nonsense, they need to stop. That belongs to Texas A&M, point blank, period. Now that was the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. The 2018 version of the Seahawks is very, very beatable, at least on paper. Seattle is remaking their roster just like Denver is. Denver's big overhaul came on offense. Of course, they added Case Keenum, released C.J. Anderson. Devontae Booker's going to be starting, and they just drafted Royce Freeman, along with drafting Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton at the wide receiver spot. Seattle's big overhaul has been on defense. They cut Richard Sherman, traded Michael Bennett to the Eagles. Earl Thomas could be on his way out. There's been trade rumors surrounding him for weeks. We'll see what happens there. Cliff Averill was released after failing a physical. And Cam Chancellor, his status is still up in the air because his career as well could be over due to a neck injury, but that remains to be seen. Denver is 34-21 all time against the Seahawks, and I would love to see Denver go to 35-21 over this squad. Moving on to week 2, September 16th, the Oakland Raiders, soon to be Las Vegas Raiders, come into Denver, and I'll just tell you my thoughts on the Raider as of right now. The Raiders suck, according to me, Rochelle Hamilton Jr. Anyway, Chucky makes his return to Denver. Now, the thing I'm looking forward to in this game is I want to see how the Raiders are going to react to John Gruden's coaching style because the game has changed so much since he last coached in 2008. I want to see how that dynamic is going to play over in the locker room. I want to see what the Raiders' offense is going to look like up under John Gruden. We know John Gruden loves to pound the ball. John Gruden, he likes that old school smash mouth version of football. I want to see how that's going to play out in today's NFL. Going back to his personality, I want to see if he meshes with young players who are more interested in their brand and their social media profiles and their celebrity status and things like that than players from previous NFL generations. You know, the players that are coming into the league now, you know, we're just now really kind of getting to the point where these guys coming into the league now, they're used to having their social media profiles. They're used to being social media personalities. They're used to having brands. I mean, they're coming in with brands. They're coming in with a big social media presence. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic meshes with the old school coach like John Gruden, because John Gruden is not about all that extra noise. We all know that. He got rid of Marquette King basically for that reason. Marquette King is one of the best punters in the NFL, and the Raiders cut him because of his style. He's a flashy guy. John Gruden is not with that. So now it worked out well for the Broncos because they were able to pick up Marquette King, and that leads me into another storyline from this game. I want to see how Marquette King kicks against his former team. You know, fans, we may not think much about a special teamer wanting to get revenge on his team, but Marquette King, he did some damage against the Broncos when he played for the Raiders, and he's one of the best punters in the league. The dude knows where to put the ball to really hurt the opposing offense. So I want to see how he goes about his business after he's publicly stated the big reason why he signed with Denver was the revenge factor. And, of course, we had him and Bruce Irvin going back and forth on the Twitter exchange shortly after King signed with Denver. So I want to see how that dynamic plays out as well. Denver and Oakland have a storied rivalry, and I don't expect that to change. Now, when Chucky was in Oakland the first time, the Broncos used to whoop up on him. So, personally, I don't expect that to change. So, I really feel like at this point, and even though I'm generally not going to do win-loss predictions on this particular podcast, between these two games as of right now, I don't see a reason why Denver can't win both of these games. Moving on to week 3, September 23rd, Denver's first road trip, going out to Baltimore to play the Ravens. This was my Uncle Dale's favorite team God rest his soul. My Uncle Dale absolutely loved the Ravens. I remember he used to call me up every Sunday, basically. We would talk about the Broncos and the Ravens. He would give me a hard time about the Broncos, and I would do the same thing about the Ravens. So from that aspect, I kind of have a soft spot for the Baltimore Ravens. And my good friend Amanda Goodman Baldoviezo, her dad is a big Ravens fan. So the Ravens are kind of a team. I'm not a fan of them. I don't really have a problem with them because I have some great people who love the Ravens. Having said all that, I'm still mad about that playoff game against Baltimore in Denver in January 2013 when Denver literally gave the game away, particularly on Raheem Moore giving up that 70-yard Hail Mary to Jacoby Jones, and all Raheem Moore had to do was just be in the right position and knock the ball down. That's literally all he had to do. And instead, Jacoby Jones catches the ball, runs into the end zone. They go into double overtime, and Denver gave the game away. The last time these two squads met in Week 1, 2015, well, let me rephrase that. The last time these two squads met in the regular season was in Week 1 back in 2015 in a low-scoring game. We all remember how that game ended. It ended with former Raven, now current Broncos safety Darian Stewart intercepting the ball in the end zone, and it gave the Broncos a close win. Now, this game would have more juice if Aqib Talib was still on the Broncos roster since Michael Crabtree was added in the offseason. I would love to see if Michael Crabtree got another chain yanked by Aqib Talib, but that's not going to happen, at least in this particular contest. Mike Wallace left Baltimore in free agency. Ben Watson went to New Orleans. The Ravens were pretty quiet in the offseason up until the draft, and they made some crazy draft day trades. Actually, they made some crazy trades over the first 2 days of the draft. They added RG3, of course, in free agency, and then they drafted Lamar Jackson. So while Joe Flacco may be the guy this year in Baltimore, the quarterback competition in Baltimore is going to heat up between now and 2019 because Lamar Jackson is a baller. There's even been comparisons to Michael Vick as far as Lamar Jackson goes and his athletic ability. And if Lamar Jackson does what Michael Vick didn't do on the mental side of the game early in his career, if Lamar Jackson gets inside the playbook, if Lamar Jackson watches film, stays late after practice, and works on routes with his receiver, if Lamar Jackson gets the mental side of the National Football League down and mixes it with that Michael Vick-like athletic ability, Lamar Jackson is going to be a straight-up beast. So keep your eyes on him out there in Baltimore, because one thing we know about Baltimore has some good coaching. So if they can really coach Lamar Jackson up, and if he's willing to put the work in, that dude is going to be trouble for opposing NFL defenses in the years to come. Now, that's about the Ravens in the future. In the present time, I want to see what kind of quarterback do they have in Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco seems to get hot at times, then he seems to get cold, and then he just seems to completely drop off the radar other times. So I kind of want to see what kind of quarterback the Ravens have in Joe Flacco. Chiefs week, October 1st, week 4. The Kansas City Chiefs make their way into Denver. I hate the Chiefs. Just straight up, I hate the Chiefs. So it pains me even more to say this next stat. Denver's been swept by the Kansas City Chiefs the last 2 seasons. I hate the Chiefs. So I hope Denver trashes these dudes. I really hope the Broncos smash these dudes. I don't understand why the Chiefs traded Alex Smith in the offseason. I still don't get that. Alex Smith was one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League during his time in Kansas City. The dude was not a turnover machine. He protected the ball. He gave the Chiefs some big plays at big moments when they needed it. I don't understand the trade, but hey, Kansas City, their personnel management, they get paid the big bucks to make those kinds of decisions. So they clearly saw something in Patrick Mahomes that made them feel comfortable with trading away Alex Smith. And hey, that's completely understandable. We all know NFL teams are all about youth and getting younger each year. So from that standpoint, I guess in a way I do understand it. But if you have a seasoned veteran on the squad, why not let your young future quarterback learn from one of the best? But again, I don't get paid to make those decisions. The Chiefs took some L's in the coaching department as they lost a few coaches to open positions around the NFL during the offseason. The Chiefs defense took some L's as well as they traded Marcus Peters to the Rams, of course, and then they released Tamba Hali. You may not look at Tamba Hali's release as taking an L for Kansas City. Again, going back to the youth movement, and also salary reasons. I want to see Denver dominate these dudes, period. Like, I know Denver can dominate these guys. I want to see Denver bring back that fight because the last few times, well, in the game against the Chiefs in the last week in December 2017, the Broncos put up a fight. I want to see Denver really impose their will on these dudes. Like, I can't stand the Chiefs. And also, I want to give my dude Al Simmons a hard time when they take this L. So that's another reason why I want the Broncos to take this game. Week 5, the Broncos make their second road trip of the 2018 season, October 7th, when they head out to New York to play the Jets. When these two squads met last year in 2017, Denver shut the Jets out, which is something Denver hadn't done since the 2005 season. The Broncos did this with Brock Osweiler at quarterback, so that gives you an idea of how much the Jets have struggled in personnel as far as players go. There's not much intrigue in this game to me, honestly. Well, I mean, I guess you could look at the Sam Darnold angle of it because we know John Elway and the Broncos brass. We know Sam Darnold was one of the quarterbacks that they really liked. So, you know, from that aspect of it, I guess you could say you might really pay attention to that. But outside of that, I really don't see a whole lot of intrigue with this game. Now, of course, the Jets, they signed Teddy Bridgewater in the offseason. Well, I guess that's my intrigue as far as this game goes because I really like Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback. Teddy B is one of my guys. Now, if he can return to his 2015 Pro Bowl form, the Jets might have something. They can either have a quality starting quarterback and give Sam Darnold a chance to really learn the game and really just kind of sit back and marinate for a year, or they have a quality trade piece in Teddy B. Because Teddy B, when he's healthy, Teddy B is a baller. I still remember in 2015 when him and the Minnesota Vikings came into Denver, I think it was week 2 or week 3, and he passed all over the Broncos 2015 defense, and that defense was historically great. He passed all over those dudes and shredded them up. The only reason why the Broncos won the game is because T.J. Ward came around the edge on the very last play of the game, knocked the ball out of Teddy B's hands, and, of course, Von Miller recovered it. That's what preserved the win for Denver. But outside of that, Teddy Bridgewater can hang with the best in the NFL. So I really want to see him get healthy, and I want to see if he can become the quarterback that I thoroughly believe he can be. Outside of that, and Sam Darnold, I really don't see a whole lot of intrigue with this game. I just really hope this is another W for the Broncos. October 14th, week 6. Now, this game right here, it has the potential to either have some fireworks or it has the potential for the Broncos to take an L and possibly even get blown out. The Los Angeles Rams make their appearance in Denver. This game right here is going to have some juice to it. This might just be one of the best games all season. Wade Phillips loved coaching in Denver, and he made it publicly known multiple times. He loved it in Denver, and he was let go after 2 good seasons leading the Broncos defense. So you know he's going to have some extra juice in the tank for this game. Aqib Talib will as well. Both guys absolutely love Denver. Both guys wanted to end their careers in Denver, and we know how athletes and coaches feel when they face a former team who let them go, especially when the former team lets them go after they've been productive for that team. It's like when the honey you love dumps you and then y'all see each other later on down the road, and then you have another honey that hopefully, Lord, I hope, looks better than the one that let you go so she can see how she took that L. That's exactly how Aqib Talib and Wade Phillips are going to come into this game feeling. Aqib Talib is still one of the best defensive backs in the league, and they got Marcus Peters in a trade with Kansas City. The Los Angeles Rams already have one of the best cornerback tandems in the NFL with Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters on the outside. Then you've got that tough defensive line led by Aaron Donald, and then they go out and they pick up Ndamukong Suh in the offseason. The Rams are going to have one hell of a defense. There's no other way to put it. The Rams are going to be tough. Now, you put this tough defense with an explosive offense that's led by Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, and I would not be surprised if the Los Angeles Rams turn out to be Super Bowl contenders in 2018. The Rams ain't no joke. I could honestly see Denver taking an L in this game. Point blank, period. 4 days later, on October 18th, the Broncos and the Cardinals kick off Week 7 on Thursday night out in Phoenix. This matchup could be interesting, considering Denver liked Josh Rosen leading up to the draft, course, we know Denver went on to pick Bradley Chubb with the 5th pick, which was a great pick, by the way. And, of course, Josh Rosen dropped all the way to number 10 to the Cardinals. Josh Rosen did not like being picked at the 10th spot. He made the remark that there were 9 mistakes drafted ahead of him. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts coming out with that extremely confident attitude. I really hope he lives up to it. Now, another interesting storyline in this game, the Cardinals signed Sam Bradford in the offseason. And, of course, Case Keenum replaced Bradford in Minnesota last season, and we all know what happened there. And speaking of Sam Bradford, I want to know how this dude keeps robbing NFL teams. Actually, you know what? I can't even say he's robbing teams because teams are lining up to pay this dude bukus of money, and he's been injured for a good part of his career. But, hey, you know what? I can't even hate Sam Bradford for that because I say all the time when it comes to NFL players, get your money, man, because if an NFL owner is going to pay you that kind of money, even though he knows your injury history, you'd be a fool not to take it. So, Sam Bradford, get your money, bruh. Larry Fitzgerald is my guy. This game doesn't really have a whole lot of intrigue to it for me personally, but Larry Fitzgerald is my guy, so it's good to see him still in the league. Larry Fitzgerald is one of the great, great men, just as a person, not even talking about as a football player, just as a person, as a humanitarian. Larry Fitzgerald really is one of the best men in the National Football League. But outside of these few aspects in this game, this looks to be one of the less intriguing games on the Broncos' schedule, like I say, at least for me personally. But I do hope Denver wears their color rush uniforms in this game. Fingers crossed. October 28th, Chiefs week yet again. The Broncos make a trip out to Kansas City for the Week 8 matchup against the Chiefs. I hate the Chiefs. I've already said that a few times. But the good thing about this game is the Broncos aren't playing in Arrowhead Stadium in December because the Broncos' record in Arrowhead in the month of December is not very good. So that's the one good aspect of this game. And Arrowhead Stadium is one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. It's actually, as a Broncos fan, it's actually a stadium that I really want to go visit just because I want to see this atmosphere that everyone talks about out in Arrowhead. I want to see it firsthand. The last time Denver was in Kansas City, Trevor Siemian threw 3 picks, and that game was painful. That was a Monday Night Football game, and that was a game that I didn't even finish watching the game because I think after the second pick, I think I just turned the channel because it was unbearable to watch. Now that the Broncos have a decent guy at quarterback and they've got a pretty decent running game, I won't be surprised to see these two teams split the series. Whoever's at home, I believe, will get the W in this series in 2018. So the Broncos will win the one in Denver, and Kansas City will win the one in Kansas City. I thoroughly believe that's how this series is going to go in 2018. Week 9, November 4th. This is one game that I'm really looking forward to. This is a game that I think is going to be an absolute great game. I think it's going to be a lot of fireworks in this game as the Houston Texans make their way up to Denver to play the Broncos. These two squads last met in 2016 on Monday Night Football. The Broncos ended up winning that contest 27-9. Deshaun Watson is an electrifying player. I love Deshaun Watson, and I love what he brings to the game of football. I really believe that if Deshaun Watson hadn't have gotten injured last year, he was going to lead the Texans deep into the playoffs because this is a dude that went head-to-head, toe-to-toe with Seattle's defense and Tom Brady as well. Of course, he didn't come out on the winning end of either one of those games, but just the fact that coming in as a rookie and this dude went toe-to-toe with one of the best defenses in the league and one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game tells you a lot about his football acumen as well as his athletic ability. I'm excited for this game because of the potential of a shootout. The Broncos still have a solid defense, as does the Houston Texans, but the potential for a shootout is there. Deshaun Watson is a baller. He's a flat-out baller. Denver's revamped offense and top 10 defense against Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, and the other weapons on Houston's offense, as well as a stout Texans defense, should make this one exciting matchup to watch. Defensively, a lot of that's going to hinge on, defensively for the Texans, a lot of that's going to hinge on whether or not J.J. Watt is healthy at this point in the season. He hadn't been able to go deep into the season the last few years, so it's going to remain to be seen what happens there. Starting week 5, games can be flexed to Sunday Night Football. You remember how in the opener I told you there were 2 games on the Broncos schedule who I would not be surprised to see if they were flexed in the Sunday Night Football? This is one of them. Also, at this point in the season, depending on how things go, of course, the games still have to be played. But depending on how things go at this point in the season, both of these squads could be playing for playoff positioning. So that's another thing that could make this game a fun one to watch. Mark this game on your calendar, I'm telling you, because this game right here is going to have some fireworks in it. Now, at the end of it, I thoroughly believe this is definitely a game that the Broncos can win, but this is definitely going to be one of the better games of the 2018 season. The Broncos get an early Christmas gift, and they get a late bye week in Week 10 this year. They had an early bye week in 2017. I believe they had a bye week in Week 4 or Week 5. And me personally, when it comes to bye weeks, I'm not a fan of early bye weeks because if you've played sports, any sport at any level, you know it really takes a team about the first month and a half into the season before they just really kind of just start gelling. Because that first month of the season, players are still really kind of just knocking the rust off. Players are figuring each other out. Coaches are figuring players out. Everybody's still kind of getting their bearings about them as far as the regular season goes. So to me, I'm not really a big fan of early bye weeks. Following the Week 10 bye week, the Broncos go out to Los Angeles on November 18th. Week 11 to face the Los Angeles Chargers. I hate the Chargers as well. If you haven't noticed, I hate every team in the AFC West not named the Denver Broncos. Phillip Rivers is a great quarterback with Hall of Fame credentials, no doubt. But when he doesn't get his way or when his team's in a rut, this dude, he pouts like a kid and he throws these temper tantrums. And I absolutely love it because if Phillip Rivers is mad and Phillip Rivers is throwing a tantrum, that means Phillip Rivers is getting beat by the Broncos, and I absolutely love to see Phillip Rivers in his feelings when the Broncos are ahead on the scoreboard. Now, having said all that, one of the best games I have ever seen, being a Broncos fan aside, one of the best football games I've ever seen happen between the Broncos and the Chargers back in the 2012 season, that Monday Night Football game in San Diego. I remember the game started while I was at work. I was watching the game at the airport. The Broncos were down 24-0. I was upset on the drive home. At first I wasn't even going to watch the game. I wasn't even going to go home and watch the game because the Broncos were down. They were getting blew out. I just knew that game was over. And then next thing I know, I believe it was Demaryius Thomas scored the first score in the game, got the Broncos on the board on a pass from Peyton Manning, and then that's when the comeback started. And the next thing I know, the Broncos, they come back to win 35-24 after 35 unanswered points, 3 touchdowns by the offense, 2 pick sixes by the defense, and just a great, great game. Well, of course, if you're a Broncos fan or just a casual football fan, that was one of the greatest games I've ever seen. That was 2012. Back to 2017, the last time these two teams played, Denver got shut out by the Los Angeles Chargers last year, 21-0. The first time that's happened to the Broncos in 25 years before that game. Antonio Gates is no longer there. The Chargers released him. They want to get Hunter Henry more involved in the offense. And also the Chargers have a solid defense. So this is a game where it could go either way. I could see this game either having a lot of fireworks or being a low defensive game, to be honest with you. And with this being in Los Angeles, even though I like to trash talk the Chargers actually had a really good draft class. They did some great things in the draft. They also had a pretty solid free agency. They didn't do a whole lot, but they signed some players that they felt could really come in and help them win. The Chargers have a chance to really build something nice, and they're laying the groundwork for it right now out in L.A., so don't sleep on the Chargers. The Chargers might actually be the team to beat in the AFC West. And that's not only me saying that. John Elway himself has said the Chargers look really good, and some of the things that they're doing and putting together in Los Angeles could have them being the top team in the AFC West, at least on paper. Now, the Broncos will be coming off the bye week whenever this game is played, so that's one thing that they'll have going in their favor coming into Week 11. November 25th, Week 12, the Pittsburgh Steelers make their way to the Mile High City, and for the record, I'm just going to say it, I am tired of Ben Roethlisberger and his divaness. Like, dude, I get it. You're the quarterback for the Steelers. I completely understand. But this dude acts like the Steelers had to consult him about drafting a quarterback in the draft a few weeks ago. You know, this dude floats retirement every offseason, and then he turns around and he gets mad for the team preparing for him to do God knows what. Now, I'll give him this. they should consult him and talk to him about guys on offense when they're trying to bring somebody in, like a wide receiver, a lineman, a running back, a tight end, or if they're getting rid of somebody. Absolutely, consult your quarterback. It's going to affect him directly. But, again, this dude floats retirement every offseason, and the Steelers, they did the smart thing. They went out and they grabbed a guy. They started planning for the future because here's the thing about Ben Roethlisberger as well. Even without him floating retirement, Ben Roethlisberger's getting up in age. Ben Roethlisberger's a very, very big guy. He's a huge guy. So, of course, the bigger guy you are, the more hits you have to take for people to take you down. Well, the more hits you take, the more likely you are to get injured. And after that, not only are you more likely to get injured, but the more hits you take over time, those hits take tolls on your body. So the Steelers did the smart thing. They drafted a quarterback. Nobody said he was going to just come in and just start now, but they took him in the third round, and it was like Roethlisberger got in his feelings. And it's like, come on, man, it's not that serious. You're Ben Roethlisberger. You'll be fine. You know, the Steelers are not getting rid of him anytime soon. Having said all that, I will not be surprised if Denver takes an L in this game. The Steelers have a great offense. They've got Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster on the outside at wide receiver. Le'Veon Bell, one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the NFL in the backfield. Vance McDonald and Jesse James at tight end. These dudes have some straight-up ballers on offense. And the last time the Steelers and the Broncos met in the regular season in 2015, Chris Harris Jr. is the best cornerback in the National Football League, bar none. The stats back it up. But Antonio Brown gave Chris Harris Jr. fits on the field in Pittsburgh in 2015. So I don't expect that to really change. Now, Chris Harris Jr., he may change up his game a little bit, and maybe he took that as a learning experience back in 2015. But I definitely expect them to go at it all game. So that's a matchup that I'll really be looking at on the outside. They've got speed in Antonio Brown. They've got speed and veteran experience in Antonio Brown. Then they've got straight-up speed in Juju Smith-Schuster. But he's starting to rack up some experience. He's coming into his second year. So this is going to be a game that's going to be a knockdown, drag-out for the Broncos. Like I said, with all those offensive weapons that the Steelers have, I won't be surprised to see Denver take an L in this game. Week 13, December 2nd, the Broncos make the trip out to Cincinnati to face off against the Bengals. This is another less than intriguing matchup on the Broncos 2018 lineup. Andy Dalton torched the Broncos in 2017 for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. So he lit them up, no doubt. But here's the thing with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton he's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type of guy at quarterback. Well, I can't even say he's Jekyll and Hyde. Andy Dalton, he's a unique case as far as an NFL quarterback because he's not an elite quarterback like Tom Brady or Drew Brees, but he's good enough to be a starting quarterback in the National Football League. He gives you fits at times. They've also still got A.J. Green at the wideout spot, and he's still a beast. Marvin Lewis has like 13 lives in Cincinnati. Some way, somehow, this dude winds up staying in Cincinnati year after year after year. This dude even tried to leave Cincinnati this past offseason, and some way, somehow, they managed to talk him into coming back. I don't know what the Bengals love about Marvin Lewis. I really don't. I don't understand it. I mean, he's a great guy, no doubt. He's a great guy. He's a great guy. He seems to be a solid coach, but for some reason, the Cincinnati Bengals, they just feel like they can't let him go. I don't get it, but hey, it is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see how this dynamic bleeds into the locker room. You know, sometimes when someone tries to leave a job and they're talked into staying at a job or coming back to a job, and then as time goes on and things don't go the way they originally planned, you have the potential for resentment and things like that to start setting in. So I kind of want to see how that dynamic's going to play out throughout the organization as the season progresses. Now, as far as Denver's defense, they should have a field day, especially Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, because the Bengals' offensive line is near the bottom of the league when it comes to pass protection. So I expect Von Miller and Bradley Chubb eat that day, point blank. 49ers week 14, December 9th, the Broncos head out to San Francisco to face the 49ers. These two teams haven't played each other since 2014 in the regular season. This game is very unpredictable. Well, actually, they all are in the National Football League. The 49ers are on a big upswing, though, ever since John Lynch took over as their GM. Kyle Shanahan took over the head coaching spot after being in the running for Denver's head coaching job. Many Broncos fans, of course, wanted young Shanahan, but to be honest, most of that was just because of his last name and mostly for nostalgia reasons. I'm still upset about Super Bowl 51. The Atlanta Falcons should have won that game. They should have had their first championship by now. You were gutting them in the running game. Just keep handing the ball off. Y'all walk out of here with the win, but of course they didn't, and we all know what happened afterwards. Now, this game could be the game to tell if John Elway made a mistake in hiring Vance Joseph over Kyle Shanahan, because in 2017, Kyle Shanahan went 6-10 in San Francisco. Of course, Vance Joseph went 5-11 in Denver. But here's the thing. Kyle Shanahan brought himself time with his 6 wins because they came out when Kyle Shanahan got started. I think they went like 1-9. Then they end up putting Jimmy G in there. They end up 6-10. So they started doing some really good things toward the end of the season. So with that, Kyle Shanahan brought himself a little bit of time. Vance Joseph, of course, shortened his leash with the way everything happened last year. So this is going to be the game where, and you know this storyline is going to be out there as to whether or not John Elway made a mistake in hiring Vance Joseph over Kyle Shanahan. So we'll see what happens there. And, of course, at this point in the season, the Broncos could either be playing for playoff positioning or playing for the future. So hopefully it's the former and not the latter. As far as wins, losses, of course, I'm not really focusing on wins and losses at this point, but I see no reason why Denver can't win this game in Week 14. Getting to the close of the season, Week 15, the Cleveland Browns make their way to the Mile High City, and this game right here has a lot of potential in it, and you're going to think I'm crazy. Yes, I know it's the Browns, but this game right here, do not be surprised to see this game get flexed to Sunday Night Football on NBC. Yes, I said it. And mark my words, this game has the potential for it. This is one of the games that I have circled on my Broncos schedule. Yes, I know it's the Cleveland Browns. I get it, but hear me out. The Browns made some of the most stunning moves of the offseason in a 36-hour period. You know, the Browns called everybody and their mama trying to make deals earlier in the offseason. They brought in Tyrod Taylor, who I think is a very, very, very good quarterback. He doesn't turn the ball over much. And the dude has some skates to him. He can run. They got Jarvis Landry, a speedster who can hold his own. He had 112 catches, 9 touchdowns in 2017. They brought in Demarius Randall over at corner. He's had at least 3 picks in each of his seasons with the Packers. They drafted Baker Mayfield, of course, at number 1 overall, and some people hated the move. I loved it. Baker Mayfield is a baller. And here's the thing about Baker Mayfield. If he can keep his head straight, if he can keep his head on straight and stay out of trouble, Baker Mayfield is going to do some great things in Cleveland. Because here's the thing with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was not just handed his football career. Baker Mayfield had to work to get where he's at in his football career. He had to work to make his way on to the Oklahoma football team after basically being dismissed. Well, I won't say dismissed, but after basically being overlooked at Texas Tech. He walked on to Oklahoma, and look what he did at Oklahoma. Then he comes out and he's the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. You don't get to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft after walking on to a college team by just being lazy and partying all the time. Yes, I know about his off-the-field stuff, and that's the thing that's going to be the big hang-up with Baker Mayfield is, can he keep his nose clean? Can he keep his head straight? And if he can, because you know he has the work ethic to really be among the best. So his work ethic is not a question. It's his off-the-field mentality that might raise some red flags, but Baker Mayfield is a baller, and I thoroughly believe Baker Mayfield is going to do some great things with the Cleveland Browns. I see no reason why he can't be in Cleveland for at least 5 years, and I know that sounds crazy, but 5 years is a lifetime for Cleveland Brown quarterbacks. They also drafted Denzel Ward with the 4th pick, and Baker Mayfield was so good that John Elway was actually considering moving up to grab him in the draft, even with Case Keenum on the roster. And the reports are out there that Baker Mayfield was John Elway's favorite quarterback in this draft. With all that being said, that tells you just how much the Broncos thought of Baker Mayfield. John Dorsey's changing the culture out in Cleveland. I absolutely love what the Cleveland Browns are doing as far as turning around their organization. Look out for the Browns the next few years. I'm telling y'all, I get a lot of people who laugh at me when I say that. The Cleveland Browns are on the turnaround. Now, having said all that, the Browns, you still going to take this L, bruh. Week 16, Christmas Eve, the Broncos head out to Oakland. It's Raiders week once again. The Raiders suck. This game is on Christmas Eve, Monday Night Football. Tune in. And the following week, in the last week of the NFL regular season, December 30th, the Chargers head out to Denver. The Chargers suck. The Broncos won a crazy one over the Chargers in Monday Night Football last year. You saw a little bit of that mile-high magic make its presence known with that blocked field goal at the end of the game that gave Denver the win. Now, Denver at this point will either be playing for playoff positioning or for their future. So, again, this is just my overview of the upcoming 2018 schedule for the Denver Broncos. Like I said earlier, I see no reason with their schedule, on paper at least at this point. It's just the offseason, of course. But I see no reason on paper why the Broncos can't go 9-7 or 10-6 or even 11-5. I absolutely see no reason why they can't. So it remains to be seen. I like a lot of the moves that the Broncos made in free agency, in the draft. I think we greatly improved our roster in Denver. So it remains to be seen what happens there. Well, that's my time for episode 12 of the Undrafted Podcast. I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, talents, and the resources to be able to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and hang out with me at this podcast. It means the world to me that you take time out of your day to come and hang out with me. Don't forget, you can follow the Undrafted Podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted Podcast and on Twitter at the Undrafted Pod. And remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.